We do, in a moment, have a talk coming up from App Annie, the track sponsors, on how to maximize the game economy with ad monetization from Ron Thomas. But I will take this opportunity just to thank our other sponsors, obviously Diamond sponsor Agora, who was just in that previous panel, Platinum sponsors Microsoft GameStack, Denuvo, and Facebook Gaming, and gold sponsors AppLovin, Unity, G-Star, 10 Square Games, Twitter, and Singular. And all the track sponsors that you can see to my left, your right. I think we are ready to go now with Ron, if he is joining us. Are you there, Ron?
Hello,
Hi, Ron.
everyone. Hi, Rick.
Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. It's very warm in my flat, so I'm going to turn myself on mute, turn my fan back on, and let you go ahead and take over. So yes, how to maximize the game economy with administration with Ron Thomas from track sponsor App Annie. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, everybody, for joining. Excited to spend a few minutes with you today. I'm calling in from, normally it's sunny California this time of year, but right now it's smoky California due to all the wildfires and smoke we have. But glad that we're all safe, and I hope that with everything going on that you and all of your family are also safe. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. We'll try to take advantage of the time and go through a small presentation that we have, and look forward to any questions that you might have for myself at the end of the session. So I'll just go ahead and just share my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, Rick, can you see my screen here?
Yep, all looking good.
All right, great, thanks. Hello and welcome again, everybody. My name is Ron Thomas. I'm the General Manager of our Analytics Solution. So that means that I'm responsible for one of our core solution offerings globally. So very excited to spend a little bit of time with all of you here today. So let's dig into kind of what we want to cover off today. So a little bit about App Annie. I think most folks here are probably familiar with App Annie, and it's a name that's been around now for quite a while. We're privileged to work with over 1,000+ customers representing some of the best and brightest across the mobile app economy throughout the globe. So it's an incredible opportunity, an incredible organization, and we've been really focused on continuing to drive innovation over the past several years. So historically, a lot of our association has really been around market data. So really it's our third-party market data offering. That's what you see over here on the top left-hand side, market intelligence. And so that's really been our historical offering, which really provides you as a game developer to really understand what's happening in the mobile marketplace and what's happening out in the app economy out there, really for you to understand competitive landscape trends from a user perspective, and really try to unpack what are those unique opportunities available to you to really go and drive and maximize any and every single opportunity from a revenue perspective. However, earlier this quarter, we've also released our App Annie Ascend solution. So our App Annie Ascend solution is really the advertising solution as it relates to your own data. So you can think about this as how do you best understand performance as it relates to your own specific data in both across advertising and really across in-app purchases and all the revenue components and all the cost components as well. So two different data sets. One is really all about third party. Hey, what's happening out there in the landscape and in the market? And the other is really about first party data, which is your own data in order to understand how am I performing to really ensure that I can navigate the best strategies available to go and really become a leader in whatever sector that's really applicable to me. Now, App Annie also works with companies outside of gaming, mainstream media entertainment and a variety of other verticals as well, all designed in order for people to really understand, hey, what else can I do in terms of really understanding what market leaders are exercising today. So with that in mind, two side-by-side data sets fueled by data science, really enabling success for all of our customers throughout the globe, fueled also by customer support with a variety of different services and education as well, in order to make sure that anybody who really uses the platform can truly be successful. So as I mentioned, some of the world's leading brands here, so excited to partner and work with some of these incredible companies. Some of these companies like Zynga, for example, obviously, Jam City, Ludia, and just several other customers throughout the world, some of the best and brightest that we really see. So with that in mind, we also want to talk about one of our newest products that we've just released. So this is another third-party data offering component that sits inside our intelligence suite. It's called Game IQ. Game IQ is really a brand new innovative solution that App Annie has released in the marketplace. While there's many different gaming taxonomies out there, this really not only provides the flexibility for you to kind of go and generate your own tags, but also to understand what's happening out there really from a genre perspective, and also deep down in terms of what's really driving performance, whether it's usage, whether it's revenue, and really how can you undertake and unpack for yourself, hey, what are some things that you can actually take into account? One of the ways that we see customers utilize products like this is really to understand best-in-class performance across one sector. Like, for example, what's actually happening in casual or hyper casual or ultra casual, and then how do I actually take that into a different type of sector and think about, what does that mean in terms of gameplay, in terms of how to go maximize monetization components as well. We also have our App Annie Ascend product, which we'll also speak about today. Again, this is really all about ingesting your own first-party data. So we just talked about Game IQ, which is a taxonomy designed for you to help understand the marketplace. App Annie Ascend is really designed to help understand your own data and performance. So as you think about what actually happens once you ingest data from various different sources, whether it's your DSPs on the user acquisition side, SSPs, in-app purchase components from the stores, mediation platforms, or even product usage, really to put all that together, make sure you have one consistent schema from a normalization perspective, and then quickly be able to visualize and unpack that and really understand, hey, what is my performance and what are those opportunities that exist for me to go and drive and maximize performance in a strategic way? And what might be some of the specific monetization mechanisms that I might need to shift? For example, should I spend more in in-app purchases? Should I go drive in-app purchases in terms of driving our consumers to spend more there versus ads? And then even on the ad side, hey, what is the right mix that really makes sense for me and for the different maturity levels that are applicable in my game? So as we've kind of gone through this, I think we've launched Game IQ. There's some critical findings I think that we're really seeing in the ecosystem today across our different customers. So some of them is obviously with all the current situations that are happening on a global level, the time spent is really just dramatically changing. One of our customers talks a little bit about how their gameplay has actually had to change because in a lot of ways, users are behaving more and more on a Wednesday, more like a Saturday, right? So basically weekend gameplay has moved over and crossed over to weekday gameplay. And it's really resulted in a massive increase in terms of not only spend, but also time spent and also total consumer spend as well, and all sparking really on a download basis in terms of hyper casual in the first half of 2020. So really massive opportunities exist in this category. And we're also seeing consumers spend both time and dollars in a variety of different locations as well. We also see significant consumer spend in, for example, like action RPG games from APAC as well. So let's understand a little more about gamer preferences and how do we really unpack that in order to understand, hey, what's actually happening. So this is an example of why the taxonomy is so different and then how that actually drives strategies from a monetization, also gameplay perspective. So, if you're in a casino game, right, we look at things and we can really see that, hey, where are people allocating time and energy? And I think we can definitely see, hey, leaderboards, friend invites, tournaments are all games from a casino perspective, right? So, for example, I'm a big fan of playing poker online. So it's one of the things that you can kind of play on and you can jump into a tournament, and obviously you sign up for that. There's leaderboards, you look to see how you're doing, and you also take advantage of Spark events that actually might be available too, and you also invite your friends. So these are all the different kinds of activities that are there. On the other hand, if I'm playing Clash Royale, right, and it's a very different type of gameplay there, right? So I'm going to spend a lot more time looking at gems, looking at trying to understand, hey, what exactly is the right strategy that's actually applicable, and that's also why we start to see really brilliant companies start to employ other components like YouTube, like Royale TV, to understand, hey, what is the best way to go and deal with a situation if you're facing an attack by someone who's got giants and barbarians. What is the best way to actually go and actually stop that onslaught with a counter, right? So understanding what that looks like and then saying, those are two different, gameplay components. How do you go and drive that? And what are the specific features that are really going to go and drive engagement over time are really critical as well as you look across the different genres. Loot box is also a leading monetization method going back to a variety of different games as well. I think one of the things that we see is the idea of an unknown loot box, right? Or a starter pack to all really kind of help you boost up in terms of what are some different things that are available out there, whether it's gems, whether it's new characters, whatever it might look like. You can also see the breakdown across both worldwide and then through the different key mission critical mobile markets, whether it's Brazil, South Korea, Japan, United States, or the United Kingdom, all broken out there as well. So lots of opportunities in terms of thinking about, hey, do I want to start with, power up, or is subscription more applicable? Or, hey, do I really want to think about a starter pack to really kind of get started? So really understanding from a core perspective, how are consumers spending in the first half of 2020? And what does it also mean? I think a big piece of the puzzle too that we're really seeing is if you're a new gamer, the kind of experience that you need to understand is very different than if you're an experienced gamer who's downloaded multiple different types of games. Then understanding the user journey and where that fits right now is a critical portion of how you think about success. So, I think that's something that we definitely see as well is when we talk to a publisher saying, hey, I'm gonna relatively small, getting started. How do I get there? I think it's really important to understand who your target is too, in terms of understanding if you're gonna, look at someone who's a serious game player and who's very familiar with this specific category versus someone who, quite frankly, is a noob and just trying to figure out exactly where everything goes. So part of that, once you understand the actual way that consumers are trending and the behaviors that are actually applicable, it also now provides an opportunity to think about geography and think about consumer spend based on the specific geos that you're in and then target that in correlation to go drive monetization. So whether it's, downloads specifically that you're kind of able to see, whether it's time spent, and also in terms of revenue as well. So what does that mean in the different geos? And how does that translate to the specific monetization mechanisms that are most applicable, right? So we can obviously see, for example, hey, look, if you're targeting a specific game that's great in a specific country, there's a really good question to say, hey, should you look at in-app purchase versus subscription versus ads? And how should that strategy look like based on where you are? So if you're earlier, maybe you do need to actually look at ads. But maybe that's only after a specific time spent in the game because that's really the breaking point. And then after that, instead of driving to subscription, you probably should look at a starter pack or a loot box or some gems or whatever might make sense in terms of going to drive some small in-app purchases. And then eventually, when it makes sense and the consumer spending and really the time spent is applicable, then you can kind of quickly move to actually look at subscription. Of course, all these really vary significantly by games as well. So that's also there as you think about genre. And that's why the criticality of being able to have your own tags and really being able to understand that is just really important. So now we've talked a lot about some of the gameplay components from a monetization perspective. Also wanted to spend a few minutes talking about advertising as well. So there's a conversation I have with a lot of publishers to really talk a little bit about, hey, what does this mean from a perspective as it relates to the ability and desire for people and willingness to really look at ads. Oftentimes I still hear, hey, I really don't want to look at mobile ads. But if you look at some of the data that we're actually seeing, right, a hybrid model or even kind of some mobile ads have really just now become very, very prevalent, and consumers have a different type of affinity and comfort level with that as well. And so I think part of that is really as you think about designing what's the best game that's going to drive the most revenue, it's also to kind of being able to unpack and understand the market nuances as well. And that's very applicable across different geos and across different segments. The other piece too that we really see is, even games that install first ad SDKs, right, grew in downloads and MAU, right? And we can kind of see before and after SDK installation from an ad perspective, right, it's still really growing, right? So again, there's at this point, I think we can safely say there's enough information that essentially says, hey, ads are not going to automatically destroy or limit the ability for customers and consumers to really get engaged with your game. But the question is, how do you do it, the frequency, and when you do it as well. The other piece of the puzzle is, advertisers are leveraging more and more ad platforms. And we see that across year over year. If we look at 2017, even now to 2019, across every single platform, we really see a consistent increase, whether it's the Play Store, whether it's iOS. We continue just to see increased total number of ad networks that are being utilized. So as people are thinking about, hey, UA, they're also thinking about a hybrid approach and really maximizing and going and driving revenue, and also testing new opportunities as well. Part of it that you can take a look at, whether it's Brainout or Hunter Assassin or really Free Fire, right? There are a lot of SDKs that are really there, right? And they're really trying to understand what this looks like in terms of the total advertising SDKs, attribution and analytics SDKs as well. So, definitely from a tech stack perspective, there's some complexity here, but it's also applicable in terms of really being able to test and retest and have the right amount of flexibility. Interestingly enough, you'll notice Brainout had about 17, so I've actually shrunk versus, wood turning has about 30. And finally, when we think about it from the consumer perspective, as a consumer and as someone who's out there, people are just being bombarded with ad exposures every single day across all our different devices, whether it's OTT, smart TV, smart electronics, of course, your mobile phones, your iPads, your laptops. And so how much of that you really remember it's really important. And you realize that you only really recall a very small percentage. So we think about, what is the right kind of mix in terms of the strategy that you need to employ. And one of the biggest things that we kind of think about is this revenue data relationship. It's the idea that you need to have visibility to understand in terms of, hey, what's actually happening, and then have the agility to quickly adjust, whether it's changing an ad network, moving from in-app purchases to subscription, or changing a user pack, or thinking about how you want to drive your game to have the highest impact. That also ties to the right experience that you want to drive based on the specific segmentation and the user tags that you have to understand, hey, what type of game are you really driving at, and what kind of consumers are there for your specific sector, fueled by data to go and drive revenue, have an accurate picture of your world, and continue to repeat and iterate on this cycle consistently as you look to really go and maximize opportunity, but both to understand monetization and really to understand, the relevant data elements to go and fuel that at scale. And we notice that there's a lot of publishers that are still challenged. There's still too many folks relying on spreadsheets, a lot of time troubleshooting, trying to understand what's actually happening. They're sometimes days behind in terms of analysis and just don't have the ability to really understand what's happening very, very quickly. And so the trade-off is very, very intensive. Instead of building products, you're joining connectors. Instead of growing revenue, you're troubleshooting APIs. Instead of identifying anomalies, you're clearly naming conventions. And so really think a new platform is really needed. And so, we obviously have some phenomenal customers who are very privileged to work with, whether it's someone like Quali or Jam City or Ludia, to really unpack really what's happening from a monetization perspective to go and drive revenue for your overall business. So that's really what I wanted to share at a high level. Thank you all so much for your time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rick.
Lovely, thank you very much. We do still have a bit of time for questions, so if anybody wants to drop anything into the Q&A, we can throw that over to Ron. I do have a few of my own, so I'm kind of curious about, so earlier this track, we've been talking about like different kinds of ad monetization that are coming in, so like audio ads and like seamless integrated ads. I can't remember the word, like billboards and stuff like that. What do you think about those, and like how are you seeing any sort of like growth in games using them? And do you think they're going to start becoming part of the ad economy anytime soon?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Rick. So I think when we think about the ad economy today, we still respectfully, the majority of publishers are still really thinking about, hey, we just completed a level, great, now let's display an ad, right? Yeah. But I think what we're starting to see is that, hey, there needs to be a much more holistic point of view around that, whether it's, advertising in the game itself, right? We've talked a lot about that. I think historically it's been a lot of discussions about, hey, you're playing a racing game and there's a billboard out there, and the billboard can talk about whatever makes the most sense in terms of whoever wants to go pick up that specific signage literally in game, right? And then I think there's also other discussions to actually talk about, hey, what happens, after the game's over, right? Where I'm actually talking to a publisher today, and they talk a little bit about, hey, after the level's over, they're thinking really hard about retention. So one of the ideas that they're testing right now is to say, hey, if you watch this ad, the next time you log in, you will receive a reward, but it will only be applicable in 6 hours, right? Or 12 hours, or whatever that specific window is. So they're actually thinking about, hey, if you were willing to watch this reward, we're going to give you 5 more gems, right? It's not specifically 5, but the idea is that, hey, you watch the reward and you get a delayed gratification. Was that going to go and drive a retention mechanism for you? So we've always thought about ads as purely driving revenue, but I think we're also seeing trends. We're saying, hey, will watching ads also change user behavior strategically, as we think about key components and really staying on top of mind and driving yet another reason to come back and log into the game.
And so you've also got a lot of data about genres and which ones are proving popular. Obviously, Battle Royale is absolutely huge at the moment, and there's all the usual suspects, social casino, that kind of thing. Are there any sort of growing genres that you think developers should be more aware of, or ones that maybe you've seen in the data that you're surprised about that is getting bigger that you weren't expecting?
That's a good question. I think that there are a lot of surprises in the data. I think one of them for me, which I found really surprising, is really just the time spent. So I think we all know that, hey, there's going to be some time spent. But if you look at the time spent and you look at it by region, I mean, it's amazing, right? And one of the things that we really see is in countries before that where we would expect, a normal traditional growth trajectory of, 15, 20%, we're seeing double or triple that because of all the different things that have happened this year. But if you also look at that, and think about, hey, well, where is that coming from? That means you're now targeting brand new people that are very first-time gamers as well, which is very interesting on the mobile side, because I talked a little about, the gaming noob, but I think we're actually starting to see people who have maybe never downloaded a mobile game before, right? Or really thinking about that, because part of that is, the US population is roughly only about 360 million or so. Yet if you look at the growth that's actually we're seeing here, you're talking about brand new segments of the population. So that's been a really interesting surprise for us, for me personally, as I just kind of look through some of the data components.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's sort of been fueled a lot by COVID-19 and people being stuck at home.
Yeah, that's right. So it's like, how much Netflix can you watch, right? I mean, I think everyone's like, all right, I've literally run out of things to watch. I mean, I've seen everything. I've seen the recommended, continue watching, watch again. I mean, you have a content problem when Netflix is like, would you like to watch this show again, right? You go, okay, hey guys, I really have seen just literally everything, right? So we start to see all those kinds of trends as well, where people are actually looking for different ways to stay engaged.
Mm. And so, as well as genres and other things, are there any sort of interesting regions and countries that you've seen sort of growing as markets for games?
I think the standard places. I think I touched on a lot of them in kind of the actual presentation. Brazil continues to grow, Japan, South Korea, right? I mean, I think China has always been a mainstay for a long time. The U.S. too, right? I think if you'd asked me, hey, how much gameplay is available in the U.S. A year ago, I would have said, doesn't feel like there's that much more we can really grow, because the population is relatively small compared to other countries. And even look at the total number of devices, but we're still seeing growth really everywhere, right? So I wouldn't say one specific country or segment has really stood out as being unexpectedly growing really fast, but definitely growth throughout. Yeah.
Cool. And I guess just as a you don't have to have any specific ideas about this, but as sort of a general sort of view to the future, is there any sort of trends that you're seeing at the minute that you think are going to be overall huge for the market? Is there anything you're particularly excited about for the future of mobile games?
I think there's two things. The first thing is really the dawn of ultra casual. And one of the things I think about is I have a 15-year-old daughter, and she spends her time on TikTok and all the usual places, but she also plays ultra casual. And when I asked her about it, it's like, hey, why ultra casual? And her feedback is, hey, it's something I feel like I can win at. I get a satisfaction of feeling like I'm in control of something and winning something in a really short span of time. And her attention span is incredibly short, right? And so I think the first thing is, we're definitely seeing that kind of change in generation. And then the technology innovation cycle is radically different. I also have a little son who can barely talk, and he's 2 and some. So, my daughter looks at my wife and says, hey, Mom, why do you use a laptop? That's so old school. Here's your iPad. Just do it on the iPad. My son, on the other hand, looks at my daughter and goes, hey, you're so old school. Why do you use an iPad? I just use Siri, right? And so you're kind of seeing that technological, cycle of innovation really shrink over time, and those cycles are much shorter. I think that's one big bucket, and that ties into what I was talking about from an attention perspective as well in terms of what's successful. I think the second thing is really, I like to call it as like the collapse of mediums. So what I mean by that is that we think today everything is relatively siloed. Hey, I'm on my laptop, I'm on one device, I can do certain types of activities. Gameplay is restricted to this specific device, right? To my PC. Hey, I'm on my iPhone, I'm going to look at a different type of games. But I would challenge us to say, when we think about where the industry is going, there's also, I think, an interesting discussion around cross-platform engagement. And what does that look like? And how do we actually build that? And how do we actually say, how do we get somebody to move from one platform to the other? And what does that mean for the stickiness of my game, the stickiness of the user that I have? Which then also results to say, hey, okay, what can I possibly extract from a monetization perspective from that individual? So I think lots of stuff is there. And then, of course, IDFA is dawning in the horizon as well. So I think all these changes, innovation and agility are definitely key components that everybody needs to really embrace here.
And as well, like I was just remembering then, like Apple is just about to start allowing Stadia and xCloud games, and but only if they're allowed as separate apps, and then that's going to allow App Annie to start tracking like huge console games on iOS. I think that's pretty exciting as well.
We are so excited about that. I can't wait to start tracking some of those and to really understand what's happening out there as well, right? So it'll be interesting as we continue to expand in terms of our footprint too.
Wonderful. Right, we will wrap up there, but thank you so much, Ron, for joining us. It was a really great talk, and it's great chatting with you afterwards. So yeah, you're free to go, and if people want to talk to Ron, ask any questions, I imagine you're on the Meet to Match and Discord and that kind of thing. I'm sure people can reach out to you.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.